What's up, y'all? It's Cousin Chet. How you doing, everybody? Happy New Year, 2023. What's up, Dill? Good to see you.
Nice to see you.
Happy New Year, sir. I like the hat. I think that works for us, especially this time of year.
By the way, maybe I should have said this a minute ago. Have you heard anything about YouTube's new terms of service?
No.
About how they're going to demonetize videos across the board who have any sort of swearing or cursing within the first, I want to say 30 seconds of a video.
Did I curse already?
No, but I just figured I'd throw that out there.
Yeah, they're definitely growing into this situation, and I think that they're just gonna hold on to the it's our house. So if you want to come to our house and produce your stuff, you can, but you don't have to do it our way.
There's a nice European turn of phrase for it, I think, which is nanny state. YouTube's kind of becoming its own nanny state.
Yeah, it's kind of hard because if I bring it down to a small, say if it wasn't a worldwide millionly used platform and it was just a coffee house, right? And I have my coffee house and I'm like, hey, we can have an open mic, but no swearing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Now there'd be plenty of people like, I'm not going to do that. But there's going to be plenty of people like, well, that coffee shop owner is well within his right to dictate the terms of service. You know what I mean?
I'm going to keep my conspiracy theory mindset to the length of an aphorism on this one.
Right on. So what is an aphorism?
An aphorism's, it's condensing, instead of an essay being, all right, I'm going to write a lengthy self-discussion about a topic that I feel just needs a few more layers of thought added to it before it'll be clear. That's kind of what an essay is. It's like, here's a problem. Nobody else that I've heard is given an explanation for it. I'll go ahead and do the work of writing out my thoughts on it. Well, an aphorism is that, but it's just keep it to 2 or 3 sentences. Just take a thought in your head and you get 1 paragraph max. Just get the thought out. It's kind of a way of just making you think pithier, just making you think quicker, just wittier.
More concise?
Yeah, more concise, more precise.
More precise?
But anyways.
I mean, what I hear you saying is the way that you're using is this tool to take this cloud of thoughts and to distill them into
Separate the wheat from the chaff.
Yeah.
And only write the wheat down.
Okay. And so you got an example? Do you want to share it? We will share it?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and share it. So I was thinking about tradition. I was thinking about Christmas. And I was thinking about the new year. And I was thinking about how everybody in my immediate family, my immediate family, the exception being my dad, everybody other than my dad in my family has this habit of just kind of taking ourselves up by our bootstraps and just all right, well, my feelings, clearly nobody's receptive to how I feel or think about this. I'm just going to turn around, I'm just going to walk in the other direction, and I'm going to forget that this ever happened. Well, we've gotten pretty good at not expecting much from holidays because of that, outlook. So I was thinking a lot about tradition, and it was okay, clearly we know how to just kind of abide without having special traditions that guide our family. I don't know, even though we've lived mostly in the same place, we've had the same address for most of my life anyways. It's my immediate family's always kind of had this attitude we're nomads. We don't really belong anywhere, but you don't really belong anywhere, then everywhere is kind of home in a weird, like, circular logic kind of way.
No, I get it.
Anyways, that was the rain cloud that was like sitting in my head, and I thought I'm just gonna take a minute and I'm gonna like logically think out what is tradition, like what is a tradition, assuming that it's something beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, this is what I said. What is a tradition if not simply a routine? A structuring of time, conduct, and priority, irrespective of the fleeting circumstances of right now. Boundaries which contain and transit times and seasons, marking the road ahead with direction. This, I think, is the real nature of tradition, and what I've hitherto failed to observe in the virtue of tradition. That's kind of what a holiday is. It's like, it is like stopping to clean your room. Like it is stopping to take an inventory and take stock of, okay, what's happened thus far? Like, are we on the right track? Are we on a path where we were able to have a meaningful Christmas this year? Were we on track where it was like, yeah, you know what? Everybody's birthday was recognized. Everybody was accounted for as an individual. And we all kind of stopped and took the time to... I think that's been on my mind lately, because it's like, there's no real, like, it's easy to slide into this sense of, like, culturelessness right now. I don't know, does that make... What do you think about that?
I hear you.
Like,
I would agree with that assessment that there can be the perception of culturelessness. I think what's happening is that we are creating a new culture. I think that, you know, you and I come from a very Eurocentric culture that in these United States has been the culture that's been promoted as the culture of these United States, and to the ignoring of other cultures that make up these United States. And what we're seeing is that that narrative that our culture is the culture of these United States is not the truth. That the United States is made up of many, many cultures, so it makes it look very fragmented. And what you mentioned earlier is that your family, you know, that's where, you know, culture has many layers, right? These traditions have many layers. They have a personal meaning, right? Yeah. New Year's Eve is a good one, right? It's the collective birthday. We are all celebrating one more trip around the sun, which is the same thing you do on your birthday, right? You're celebrating your annual trip around the sun. I've made it one time, 2 times, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And so we have these different things that over time people have shared. You know, this was before the internet, so the memes were a little bit slower to get across, but the memes stuck longer too, right? You know, the memes like the superstitions. Don't eat, or you should eat this and this and this, and you shouldn't do that and that, right?
Don't even look at a porcupine; it'll throw its quills at you.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And so where do these come from? Well, they come from a variety of places, but they were a meme in society that people picked up on, and you know, the Germans were like, you should eat sauerkraut, you know, because well, that's what we have, and we're glad to have it, and you know, it cleanses our bodies and whatever, and you know, so it's tradition. Right? And then other people were like, well, don't wash your clothes on New Year's Day because you're going to wash away any luck. I don't know. Never heard of it. No. I didn't make it up. I mean, I've heard of it, but you know, I don't know where it came from, or it doesn't even make sense. You know, superstitions are like that. But traditions, right? So I was thinking about over Christmas. It totally makes sense why we have a tradition of lights. It's the darkest. time of the year. Right? So it makes sense that people would have more lighting around. It makes sense that we would associate that with it. A tradition that in a time where we have electricity, that we've carried over this tradition that people of old would have had for practical reasons. Right? And then if you study Christmas at all and the connections to the solstice and the sun rising, right, and all that jazz, and its connection to the pagan rituals that, I hate the word pagan, the pre-Christian religions.
The others.
I don't want to do that to them either, because that's just about as pagan to me. It's just disrespectful and like, it's anyway, as if they don't count, right? But anyway, my point is that all over the world, you would have people that would celebrate our position in the universe based on the movement of the stars, specifically the sun or the moon, right? The sun's a big one. It gives life. Do you recognize that every bit of energy on this planet comes from the sun? Every bit of energy on this planet. That petrol that you're burning to run your car, that energy comes from the sun.
Yeah.
It's just really old energy that's been stored. Anyway, and so, sorry.
Well, and that's what the Christmas lights are about. It's like
So we get to this point where we want to have celebrations. Here's another thought, right? Most mammals would want to hibernate, or their energy is going to slow down, right? They're going to gain weight before they come into the winter time, right? Because they know food is going to be more scarce. So we have these traditions that, like, through thousands and millions of years, that we celebrate the harvest. We celebrate having plenty, right? We celebrate the harvest, right? Let's be thankful. We got some food for the winter. Let's have a big meal before the winter, you know? And then Christmas and the solstice. Look, that hibernation for me, and I think for a lot of people, looks like what we nowadays call depression. Okay? We're not getting the vitamin C. We're not out and about. We don't have the energy, right? So what do? Let's eat some sugar for energy.
Yeah.
Let's have candy and sweets for energy, right? Why is candy and sweets so popular from Halloween to Christmas? I mean, really thinks it would take it to Valentine's Day if I want to stretch a bit. You know what I mean? Candy is really popular right now. It's not as popular in the summertime. Don't get me wrong. I recognize that people eat candy all year round, but you've got a flood of candy.
Yeah.
People purchase more candy this time of year.
Well,
now,
sugar's cheap, quick energy.
Exactly, right? And so then we come to the solstice, which is around the 21st, right? No, I don't know.
Yeah, 21st, 23rd.
Over millions of years, has that changed from the 25th? I don't know.
I think probably almost certainly.
I don't know. You know, I don't think the 25th is chosen at random. You know?
No, it's not.
There's a reason why it was chosen. There's a reason why a lot of historical godlike people who have been celebrated along the Egyptian line come in and around the solstice.
I want to say the 25th was like the Sumerian or the Babylonian solstice. But yeah, no, the idea being, this is the longest night of the year.
And we're going to celebrate this turn. Yeah? We're going to celebrate that turn. And then we're going to come to Easter and we're going to celebrate the new life of spring. Right? These aren't just, these are, Christians overlay themselves on pagan rituals. That's why we got bunnies with eggs and Santa Claus and other things.
You ever heard of the horseshoe theory?
The horseshoe theory?
Yeah. It's a political theory. But the idea is like if you go on the left wing, you kind of go in this circular fashion. And if you go on the right wing, you eventually, if you go far enough in either direction, each sentiment will eventually take you to the same place.
That reminds me of the yin yang symbol, which basically is the same thing. That the reason why there's a black dot in the middle of the white, or a white dot in the middle of the black. Because if you go, I think that my understanding is, say you're on the black side, right, and you go that far into it, you end up just being white.
I don't think this is a political thing. It's just that's what comes to my head, because you're like, for like the whole last like 15 minutes or so, you've been expressing this sentiment of, well, can we just stop judging other cultures for being different? Can we just like have some respectful?
Well, so we're talking about traditions, right?
Yeah.
And this idea that our traditions are the only traditions.
And that's kind of I've kind of had the same perspective my whole life. I'm like, well, what is, like, I'm kind of interested in the things that are different than me.
Yeah.
Like the other, or the pagan, for my whole life. Like my whole life, I've always had this sense of like, it's just unfamiliar. That's all that it is. It's just unfamiliar. And
Pagan is such a blanket term for something that's not Christian that it's.
Yeah, and I'm interested in the novelty, so it's like, for me, like, something pagan is something exciting. But anyways, I say all that to say that it's like, well, when you look at all these different traditions, like one of the reasons I started writing aphorisms is because, you ever heard of Miyamoto Musashi?
Nope.
You ever heard of the Book of Five Rings?
Think I've heard of that.
Well, Musashi was this Japanese Ronin. He was a disgraced samurai. And he basically came to a point in his life where he had this desire to be a master swordsman. But he came to this crossroads early on in his life where he could either honorably kill himself and take himself out of the equation, or he could commit himself to just wandering the shores of Japan. He could just settle himself belonging nowhere and having no home and just abiding in the world. And eventually things turned around for him. He got a job. He went around and lived life as a swordsman. Nothing else. Just him and the sword. And the Book of Five Rings is basically his meditation on the life he lived and all the wisdom he was able to discern from being a swordsman. And this guy has like 60 recorded duels, which he wins every single one. Those are just the 60 on-record duels that he fought.
Yeah.
That somebody else was there and was like, I gotta write this shit down. But the five rings are earth, wind, fire, water, and void.
And void.
He kind of closed his life, the closing chapter of his life he spent as a Zen Buddhist. He was a teacher and he's a swordsman instructor. But that was really where he kind of closed his life off, was in Zen, kind of reflecting on Zen Buddhist tradition. Anyways, that's very universal. That's about as other as it gets. That's the other side of the planet. That's the other side of the Pacific Ocean.
For you.
Yeah, for me, for us. But when he sits down to reflect on all that life has to offer, he settles on 5 memes. He's got 5 memes to share, and they're universal.
Right.
They are universal human memes. Everybody goes through life interacting with earth, wind, fire, and water.
And the void.
And there's this other thing that comes into play. Once you have kind of familiarized yourself with, okay, this is when it's time for me to live the virtues of the earth. This is when it's time for me to be resolute and fundamental. This is when I should learn from the ways of water. Water bends. It doesn't break. It's unbreakable. But it imbibes where it's at. This is a time for me to be airy. This is a time for me to learn the virtue of the wind. There's no form, it's just the parts. You can't see the whole, you just feel the parts. And you kind of just follow this sense of intuition. There's moments where you'll have to be that way. You'll have to follow the direction that, like, you just have to follow the direction that everything is sort of, there's a feeling that you have to just imbibe. And then there's fire. There's times when you can't get through life without some sort of will. And if you're not careful, you can take your will to extremes, and it'll get away from you and start burning things down around you. So you can't let your desire, you can't let your aims overwhelm you, but you can't let it get smothered out either. Anyways, point is that there's all these aspects of the human condition that he's reflecting on. And I bring that up because as separate, as distant, as far away as Musashi was doing his thing 400 or 500 years ago, as incapable as I am of really putting myself in that guy's shoes, as incapable as I am of understanding what life was like, what his culture, what his daily interactions with people in the world around him were like, as far removed as that is from me, it's like even this guy is like, hey, here's something you could probably relate to. That's kind of how I look at. It's kind of how I look at those pagan cultures, if that makes any sense. It's like, yeah, it's going to be a lot of weird stuff that takes a long time to familiarize yourself with, but at the end of it, there's always something relatable. They're always there's this great there's this similitude.
You're familiar with Carl Jung, collective unconscious, right?
Very familiar.
And so I think traditions tap into that. And I think what we find is if you truly were able to understand the religion, paganism, philosophy, these are all just ways in which humans have tried to figure out their place. And they create traditions, right, to symbolize or to honor those things. Some of them we like, some of them we don't, you know. We're not a big fan of the Aztecs cutting people's heads off and rolling them down a temple pyramid, right? That's a tradition that we just kind of find barbaric and unseemly. But that was their tradition. That was their way of honoring their sun god, right? But what we find is that I think what we find is that, especially in similar climates, right? Because one thing that Europe is a climate that has all four seasons. The culture and the traditions are based around those seasons quite a bit, right? The gods bring in this, the gods take this away, the gods bring in this, the gods do this, right? Because we don't understand the world, so we blame it all on the gods. We don't have terms like, you know, the jet stream and the Arctic polar blast, and you know, we don't have these words that describe the world around us. We have the words that we use, the concepts that we use, and since at that time in our infancy, you know, those terms are oftentimes some outer force, and that outer force is called God or gods, right? because as we understand, the religions of many hunter-gatherer groups of people had, they would just label these different things as gods because they didn't have terms like weather and earthquake and seismic shifts, and you know what I'm saying, right? So, and then I think in that collective conscious, a lot of people have recognized those elements. And first, I was just thinking, your mom is so much element, looking at the elements and helping use them to describe personalities, and so the similarities of you and her, your example of the 5 rings is different than her example of the spark.
Yeah, no, yeah.
But so anyhow, but to kind of consider that, right? That this is part of our collective consciousness. And here's the other thing. Remember, I said Christianity just overlaid on Greek pagan mythology and symbols and the timing of the season changes, right? I don't know what scholar determined that Easter was when Jesus actually died or not. I don't know how accurate that is.
Well, it's arbitrary.
Right,
really
and so is
arbitrary.
Christmas, right? It's overlaid on rituals and traditions that were already there. That's one thing that Christianity has done all over the world. It overlays itself on the present systems. That's why you have Dia de Muertos in Mexico, right? Wherever Christianity goes, it just steals the traditions that are already there, changes the names of the saints, and calls it Christianity.
Santa de Muerto.
I mean, if you look at Christian history, that's what they've done. They just overlay themselves on the traditions that are already there. Now, so what's that mean for a religion that's coming out of the Middle East, that comes into Europe, that has 4 seasons? We're talking about 2 different climates. There's different reasons for these traditions, but the traditions are there. So the tradition that I have in the Middle East of the solstice is just as important as it is up north. But guess what? I don't have in the Middle East. I don't have a fucking Santa Claus. I don't have Christmas tree lights.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, these are traditions that it's been overlaid on what? What was my tone? I feel like I'm always like, anyhow. So Christianity is overlaid on the European traditions and given European flavor. Now, because that's where Christianity takes hold the most, right? Then that's why as we, it comes from the Middle East, it kind of gets a stronghold in Europe. It's not to say that it doesn't have a hold in India or Ethiopia, but because of the way the world worked out, that the Europeans were able to affect culture around the world through industrialization and economics, right? That our version of Christianity, the Christianity that was laid over European paganism, yeah, that we try to spread around. Now, oftentimes, so like when the Spanish take over South America and they overlay Christianity, Catholicism onto those saints and those deities and those holidays, right? It comes out different than when we go to Africa, because in Africa we seem to just want to wipe it out. But it also depends on who's the colonizer.
Well, there's 2 types of warfare. Well, there's more than 2, but like there's beating each other over the head with sticks until either the other guy's head or your stick breaks. And then there's selling somebody something. And this isn't like, I find Catholic people extremely, I find Catholic people very engaging to talk to. Like, this isn't like a broad brush thing again about all Catholics, but what I hear you describing is a very Catholic MO, which historically has been, we're going here. We're going to this place. We're going to establish ourselves, and if we get the opportunity, we're going to take this place over. But the Catholic tradition has always been, isn't it easier to conquer a place by selling ideas. It's like after so many years of invading and fighting and warfare and well, we're just like after so many excursions into the Amazon jungle to try and conquer the Aztecs, at some point it's like the Catholic MO figured out. I think the Catholic Church kind of figured out first that why don't we just kind of absorb?
So I think what you just said is a misnomer. I think to say that that's Catholic is actually the flip. It's Christianity.
You think so?
Yes, because what you're just describing is Catholicism is Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
Protestantism and Anglicanism and whatever else ism is English.
I don't think Catholicism is Spanish.
Well, in the colonial aspect, right? Who colonizes South
ways.
America and who colonizes Mexico? The Spanish and the Portuguese.
And it was France and it was England for a stint.
But for the most part, the people that colonize Central and South America are the Spanish. With some little bit here and there. But the majority of it was Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
They colonized completely differently than the English. And what you're describing is actually the flip side. It's the English that come in and say, we're just going to wipe everybody out. And maybe I'm misunderstanding you. But it's the English and the French, but I'm going to speak towards the English. The English are the ones that come, we're just wiping everybody out. You cannot have any other beliefs. No, we are not going to bend and sway. Mm-hmm. You will either come our way or you will leave. And oh, by the way, Cherokees, when you come our way, we're still going to march you down a Trail of Tears because that's still not good enough.
Yeah,
but the Spanish, they're totally different. Because the Spanish, their desire for colonization is different. Mm-hmm. Spanish just want gold and silver and minerals. They're not coming into, and they're going to govern because they want control of the resources.
Well, that is the difference, though. I'm not making a value judgment. I'm saying this is kind of the Catholic. This is kind of what the Catholics seem like they figured out is, don't try to kick everybody's dick in.
Yeah.
Just try to absorb their traditions.
And right, because so they don't go killing all the natives wholesale either, right?
Yeah.
All they want to do is control things.
That's what
right. They're not trying to take the land; they just want the rights to the land.
Yeah.
Which the English figured out later. That's what they did in Africa. But anyway, that's a whole other story. Maybe I was misunderstanding you because I'm looking at this idea of traditions and how these traditions come about and how they're planted. And I thought you were saying that the Catholics were the ones that were going in and just wholesale saying.
I think
you're saying that the Catholics are the one that are like, you can get more flies with honey than you can vinegar.
Well, you get Santa Claus with Catholicism. You get Puritans with, the pure Anglican English church.
Yeah, which I think is funny to put pure and Anglican together, but yeah.
Well, maybe I'm getting my denominations mixed up.
I mean, seeing how the Anglican Church is basically the Catholic Church, except that their Pope is the Queen or the King of England. Mm-hmm. And that they just arbitrarily decided that they would be the Pope of that church. I just think it's funny to call it pure.
Maybe Puritans are a little more firebrand.
They were. That's a whole other thing. The branches of Christianity in England. And sorry that I think my misunderstanding just took us down like a weird tangent. But to go, what I'm really trying to get at is this idea of traditions and the collective consciousness, right? Mm. And how. In a way, these are the things that our ancestors did to help them get through the year, to help them symbolize and recognize different milestones, right? Because a lot of times that's what traditions are, because we have traditions that are annual too, right? I mean, there's certain traditions, like especially in the Jewish faith, there's a tradition when you come into adulthood, right? A bar mitzvah or a bat mitzvah for the woman, I guess. The Mexicans, and I don't know if this is Spanish or if this is part of the Native American culture, but they have the quinceañera, right? They have a special party to symbolize this movement from one station in life to another, right? And so that's another place where traditions come from. And there's great strength in traditions. Mm-hmm. For one, because it gives you a sense of belonging, right? If you don't have traditions and you see everybody else with traditions, right? Consider this. Consider the people that come into this country. Consider, right? Because consider this: you come from a country that doesn't have Christmas, and every year you watch your neighbors get a whole bunch of toys, and you don't. And these kids are all running around. I got toys because I was good. Santa Claus loves me, right? And you're like, dang, Santa Claus don't love me. My parents don't love me. You know, why are these kids, they're getting, I don't know what they're thinking. I'm just trying to make up an example to show the discrepancy that in that culture, right? And how easily it would seem to me that a child would feel left out because he has different traditions than the majority or the larger, you know what I mean? The big cult, like how we have portrayed it in the United States as mostly European and Christian traditions. You know, I think there's a lot of Jewish people that exchange gifts on or around Hanukkah that a couple hundred years ago maybe they didn't. You know, so anyway, collective consciousness and the benefit of that, right? The benefit of listening to the people of the past and how they went through their traditions. And so, for instance, we come up to New Year's.
Well, that's the void.
Say?
That's the void underneath all the traditions, is that collective unconscious.
Yeah.
That's kind of where Musashi takes the Book of Five Rings. He's like, here's the four rings of life. Earth, wind, fire, water. If you dwell on these things, on these elements for long enough, you can have two people from completely different backgrounds. You can set them both inside of a cave and you can give them these four things to dwell on for an indefinite amount of time. And the idea is these two guys who don't know each other, who don't know what the other one is like, if they dwell on these four elements of the world, and then if you give them the same indefinite amount of time to dwell on these things, when they leave, they'll share some sort of perspective on the world. And that shared link, that shared understanding from observing, dwelling on these same fundamental things that exist everywhere at all times, always. Just putting that attention into something links you with somebody else who's paying the same amount of attention. And that link, I think, is the fifth ring. Like, that's the void that undergirds all the traditions. I don't know, do you have any thoughts about that? I could take that a million different ways because I've been thinking about this shit for
a while.
2 weeks straight.
Got you. Well, I think, you know, the conversation of traditions is appropriate for now.
I guess I do.
And hold on, because to go back to your mom and the program that she used in her mentoring program,
The path.
That's what it was called, the path. Yes. And this idea that we all naturally have characteristics of one element or the other, right? That we're kind of born in a certain way. We interact with the world kind of similar to water. You know, some of us are more water than we are air. Some of us are more fire than we are earth, right? And you know, to bring that back to you, saying, okay, a person can choose to contemplate or meditate on the aspects of water, you know, to study water, to study the characteristics and how I as a human or he as a samurai can utilize those characteristics. Now that's very, one of my thoughts is that's very Eastern philosophy, at least, you know, coming from, you know, like martial arts style where they had like the crane style, right? They would study animals as well. You know, how does this animal fight? And it wasn't just the strikes, it was the mentality. Why is this animal using this strike? Well, because it's slow and cumbersome. So it's a bear, but it's strong, so when it hits you with power kind of thing versus, say a monkey style. I don't know enough about these styles. I'm kind of generalizing, genericizing them.
Yeah, I think that's Hungar Kung Fu. It's like a very southern central Chinese martial art. It's like observe the nature around you and take your lessons from nature. It's like the bear. He's lumbering, he's big.
Yeah.
When he runs in a straight line.
Right.
It's like
so it's kind of like embodying the bear in my style. And then I'm also relating that to embodying the earth
and like the
as
mantis,
part of my style.
The mantis, he can't see that much around him, but he just reaches. Once he grabs, he doesn't let go. But it's that same notion of, just observe the world around you and take your cues from nature.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what the fundamental virtue of that is I think the universal virtue of that, that kind of Eastern sense of spirituality is, in other words, I think where it meets the Western frame of reference is, look, these are the four fundamental elements. These are, for all intents and purposes, these are four memes. These are four spirits of the world. These spirits are in all of us because this is the world we sprung up in.
Mm-hmm.
This is the world we're in. So if you reflect deeply enough on that world, you'll come to understand yourself. And then you'll understand everybody else a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, one thing that all of this brings to my mind is, I think that's where the sense of culturelessness comes from, is we have this simulacra. We have this simulacrum of the internet. Like, for all intents and purposes, that's the matrix of today.
Sure.
We have this giant invisible screen. We have this giant invisible screen that everybody's able to project onto, and everybody's projecting on this big flat wall with everybody else's projections mixed in, and it's chaotic, and it's over the top, it's kind of edgy, it's kind of scary, it's kind of unfamiliar. But that's where you get institutions stepping in and kind of tweaking the simulacrum a little bit. We're gonna take this piece of the wall out, or we're gonna rearrange the wall like this. And for anyone who has their finger on the hot button for the matrix, the simulacrum, that allows you to kind of guide everybody's projections. And I say that, to me, this kind of encapsulates the issue with YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Deciding that they're going to throw up this naughty and nice, this naughty versus nice way of creating a video, of producing content. What it sounds like to me is, it sounds to me like they finally worked out some bugs in the algorithm, so now they can run an algorithm to catch if anybody says the naughty words in the first 30 seconds.
Well, I think really what it is they have such a percentage of the market space that they can get away with it.
Yeah, they.
So would you care if we had something called Chet's Videos, right? And this is a place where you can go post videos on Chet's Videos Chet's Videos, right?
I'm following.
Right, but there's only 100 people that come to Chet's Videos. I'm sorry, there's only 5 people that come to Chet's videos.
Yeah.
Hi, all 5 of you. Happy New Year. Thank you. And so if Chet's videos with an audience of 5 says, this is how we operate. These are the terms of service. And let's go back to the coffee house, right? Nobody's going to care. Why is it different for YouTube? I'm asking that, just going to answer it. Because it's so big, right? Because it is culturally pervasive.
They own
right?
this corner on the screen.
They own a lot of the screen, you know? And that's why, so I want to like dial that in a little bit, because the really importance is because you see that they have the power to influence, unlike the coffee shop that says, you know what, we're going to have Christian night, and if you come in here talking anything other than Christianity, we're going to ask you kindly to leave. Right? There's no difference, right? I have a church. Somebody comes in there and starts barking about Satanism, he's not welcome. What's the difference with YouTube? They say, we are creating this community. The problem is what they say is their community, you see as part of the global community and the influence that it has on the global community.
Well, I have mixed feelings about the internet because we're able to spit all this crazy shit and throw it up somewhere.
And we have multiple options.
Somebody somewhere in the world would resonate with this conversation.
If they could only find us.
Yeah. Well, see, that's what I'm saying is there's a clear utility here. This is clearly a tool at our disposal. This is a part of the world now, and we're trying to use it effectively. On the one hand, that's how I feel about the internet. On the other hand, I'm reading the Book of Five Rings, and I'm garnering from the hard-won wisdom of a man who spent his entire life moving towards life or death scenarios.
Right.
The discernment that he pulls out of living a life by the way of the sword is there's already a simulacrum. There's already a giant web, a giant screen that we're all existing on,
Samsara.
consciously or unconsciously.
A very old term, Vedic term for that is samsara, the illusion. Go ahead.
That's the void.
I think in Indian culture, I can't speak for Indian culture, but I think my understanding of that the void and samsara are 2 different things. The void would be more like the nirvana, which is the nothing. It's not that it is nothing, it is a nothing. It is not a thing.
It's an empty bowl.
It's that paradox of not being a thing and being something at the same time.
It's the empty bowl. It's the most useful bowl because it hasn't been occupied yet. It could be anything.
I think it's just they recognize it as there's this space where there's nothing, where that is beyond the material, beyond the physical.
You could pour a bunch of water in this bowl. You could fill it with rice, or you can pick it up by its end and you could start digging with it. It's useful in that it's empty because it contains all these possibilities within it. But that what I mean to say is we all kind of exist on an internet as it is.
Yeah.
And the way we interface with it is we interface with the elements of everyday life. We all have a conception of earth, wind, fire, and water. And it's like undergirding all of that is this sort of shared space that we're all on. And the Western, I think the height of what the Western tradition has to offer is ultimately a recognition of that. I think this spirit of liberty and this spirit of, I don't want to say libertarianism because I don't necessarily mean it in a political way, but I mean this sort of mimetic, if not necessarily codified perfectly, there's this mimetic notion of, no, all men are created equal under God. Regardless of the circumstantial hypocrisy of it, it's the attempt, I think the heights of Western tradition, all men are created equal under God.
I don't think that's the Western tradition at all.
No, it's not, but I think that's the highest peak. I think that's the most virtuous that it's able. I think that's the most virtuous it's able to reach is ultimately kind of this recognition of what I see when I read about Musashi reflecting on the void. There is a great something. There is a great unconscious. There's an unconsciousness that undergirds all of the human condition. And it connects everybody through time and space.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, it kind of, in a weird way, like this is a very long-winded kind of esoteric way of wishing everybody a happy new year, but it's like,
You know what? But let's. I'm gonna piggyback that because as we're talking about traditions, one of the traditions of a new year, one of them that I have perceived and that I like and I enjoy. It brings me comfort, makes me feel good, and this is how I celebrate it. It's to let the past be in the past and to be hopeful for the future, right? That's where I've been in the last week, my whole mindset. Now, how good am I doing at it? I don't know. It's kind of hard sometimes, right? Because the past was just 2 days ago. You know, last year was just a couple days ago. And so, but I personally have been, using that, right? I've been meditating on that. What's the new year mean? What does it mean to let go? What does it mean to move forward? How am I gonna participate in this collective way of celebrating, right? Because I'm not the only one that has a New Year's resolution or sets new goals or, listens to the song where the old man goes away and the new baby comes in. Like that's the ethos of the new year in a way.
the
right?
past year's already been filled.
Yeah.
It's the bowl that's not so useful anymore.
Yeah,
because
right.
It already has a purpose. It's fixed.
Yeah, it's done. It's time to put it in the storage bin. And for me, as I've said, 2022 wasn't a bad year. It wasn't a great year. As there were some really terrific things that I experienced in 2022. There was also some heartache in 2022. So it kind of come out as an even, as a wash. Yeah, but I'm going into 2023 and I'm like, okay, I want to have a clear heart, right? My last relationship ended last March. I kind of blah, 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 and, I had to get over it. I had my grieving process and whatever. But today, the New Year's Eve, I'm like, that's in 2022. I'm not even carrying it anymore. How helpful is that to me? Because I was carrying it, didn't realize I was carrying it. Been trying to put the damn thing down. Been trying to move on, pick another one up.
The lessons have been learned. They're in the storage where they belong.
But the ritual of the tradition of releasing the previous year gave me a coping skill to deal with that heartbreak, right? Mm-hmm. That I'd carried since my breakup, right? I'm like, and even though I've been out there trying to date, I recognize at the end of the year, it's something I still haven't let go of. I need to let this hurt go. Mm-hmm. It didn't work out. Let it go. Let's move on. You can't get another one if you're still carrying this one, right? Mm-hmm. Like you can't. And so I've really been doing that. But then, you said something before we started recording about, dang it, I've already started the new year off not doing the things that I said, you know what I mean? And
New Year,
my point is it's easier said than done. right? So one of the things that I've recognized is that I get really emotionally charged. It's part of my nature, right? I'm a reactive person. I tend to react more than, like, I wish that I could say that I responded more, but I'm more of a reactionary, right? Something happens, it flips, it triggers me, right? Somebody says, the Republicans are worse than the Democrats. And I'm like, you're full of shit, they're both shit. That's like arguing is horse shit better than cow shit. They're both shit. How are you gonna tell me one shit's better than the other shit? Right? But I get triggered and I'm like, let's go. Social media, right? I'm a cowboy on a keyboard, correcting everybody in the world, right? I'm gonna teach them with my typewriter skills and 180 characters. You know what I'm saying? Like, literally, like, and so, like, before we come to this, I'm having a conversation with a woman that I met in a dating context, and then it got very religious.
Yeah.
Because people love to ask you what your religion is, and I don't subscribe to a religion. Yet I have a relationship with God, and that's the part that threw her off, because I don't subscribe to a religion. I think at first she said, "Oh, he's atheist, has no respect for religion." Yeah. But then I say I have a relationship with God, and she's like, "How can you do that without religion?" Yeah. Right?
Next time you should just respond, "I believe in the void."
I believe in the void. No, I believe that I don't know and nobody knows. So stop trying to tell me your rules. You follow your rules, I'll follow mine. Anyway, but no, don't get me wrong. There's traditions, right? The Catholic Church has its sacraments. Those people those are helpful at times. For those people, they have been able to utilize them to bring their relationship closer to God.
Everybody's touchy about their corner of the screen.
Right. Well, the problem is so many people have to protect their corner of the screen, because if they find out their corner of the screen is wrong, then that means there's something wrong with them.
Yeah.
Because they identify with that thought, they identify with that process of thinking, right? And they believe that that's them.
You said a naughty word in the first 30 seconds.
What it really is their ego, it's their projection of them. It's not who they actually are. It's just what they were taught, how they think, or what they've latched onto in the current time. It's not them. To me, it's not them. Your religion is not who you are. Your religion is how you think, but you come before the thought. Yeah. So anyway, I have this really intense conversation, and I can get really intense about it and I can get defensive. And if you haven't noticed, that my defensiveness is often offensive, right? Sometimes the best defense is a good offense, but my defense is offensive, right? Like when I respond with emotion and witted words and sharp tongues, yeah? And so I was starting to recognize that in this person who is actually a very gentle woman, yeah? Very accepting of my emotional inflections. Yeah? And she helped me to see that one of the things that I want to work on is tempering myself, right? Because to me, in many ways, traditions are layers. There's the benefit to me, there's the benefit to the family, there's the benefit to the community, there's the benefit to the state or the society, and then there's the benefit to the globe, right? Traditions work in all these ways. They help us all move through the time that keeps on ticking. And so they give us structure, yeah? They give us a scaffolding in which to attach to, because our egos kind of need that to feel safe. Okay? Like Linus in his blanket. Does the blanket make him safe? No, but he believes it does. It doesn't make it real. It doesn't mean that he actually, right? But it makes him feel safe. And so he uses that blanket. We use those scaffoldings. We use these traditions. And then it also makes us feel part of something because everybody else is doing it. And there's something about the social makeup of the human being that we don't necessarily feel comfortable when we're doing a different thing. Society is not a big fan of the Kanye West or the Kyrie Irving or the misfit Chet or the conspiracy theory when really it's just a theory. Why do you call it conspiracy theory? It's just a fucking theory. YouTube, don't demonetize me. You're not sending me no money. Fucking A, come on. But anyway, so you understand what I'm saying though? Like, those traditions are comforts. They're structure. Do we need them? No. But are they helpful? Sure. And a lot of us will feel lost without them. Because what I hear is part of yours, what you're saying is, hey family, I want a little bit more tradition for us, because I think it would benefit us. These are the benefits that I see in having a tradition.
You know what it is?
I'm listening.
I think it's holiday traditions, for instance. I think they're one of the last bastions presently where people in the modern world actually unplug from this screen on the internet, from the domain of public consensus, from the social sphere of the web. It's one of the first times it pulls everybody out of that simulation and reconnects everybody in the void. It reconnects everybody in the simulacrum of just the fact that we're all fucking here at the same time. I think that collective unconscious, I think those traditions are a way of pulling us out of all these projections and bringing us into the more authentic projections.
I'm going to disagree with that.
In what way?
I think it's just an old projection.
I think it's just an old one.
Yeah.
See, I don't think that makes it authentic, but I think that's part of its authenticity.
It gives it tradition. It gives it some legitimacy, right? Because we've been doing it for a while, but
it connects people through time and space.
Yeah, but it's localized.
Yeah.
It's localized to the time and the space, and to try to carry that on to another space.
In the same way that the phrase "all men created equal under God," that's admittedly a very localized sentiment. That's an ideal that we wish for, but yeah. Yeah, but it's an ideal, but you can only apply it as far as you can reach.
I think part of what I'm pushing back against with you right now is this perspective that I'm in the center, and that my culture and my religion is the center.
Am I saying that?
Well, maybe I'm being sensitive to it, but there's this sense that, like when you say it brings everybody out into the void and back in, not everybody. Part of what you're saying that the tradition is collapsing is because you're seeing that it's not in the whole community anymore, right? And so what I'm trying to get at is the tradition that you experience here in this state, in the United States, at this place and this time, is a different tradition than a Filipino who is going to experience a Christmas in a very different way.
I see what you're thinking now.
So your screen is still a corner of the screen. There's another corner over here in the Philippines that has similar context.
No, what I'm trying to say is if you're a Muslim,
yeah,
and you're recognizing Ramadan,
right?
I know it's not Ramadan, but if we were in the month of Ramadan,
sure.
What I'm saying is embrace your tradition.
But we're talking about, I'm saying it's just another part of the screen. There's something about you that feels like it's authentic because it's been done for a while.
That makes sense.
And what I'm saying is, it's not. It's still an illusion.
Yeah.
It's still a. What was the term
But
where we used? Part of the screen.
Is it less real though than the illusion of Twitter?
I don't think. Is it less real? Is it more real? I think that is a valuation that I don't think we can give it. I don't think we can put them together. One is no more real than the other. Not in the perception of the world. If I believe it, it's true. Right? And the other part is there's a lot of people still on the internet while you're at home unwrapping gifts. That's the other part of this kind of like this localized perspective of here I sit in the middle and I think I'm in the middle when I'm not. I'm on a sphere. There is no middle. Yeah? And so I have to recognize that, especially in the time-space continuum, the tradition, the way that we practice Christmas right now is different than they practiced Christmas 100 years ago.
Yeah.
The traditions change. Yeah. So I'm going back to, it looks authentic.
Well, yeah, the original
feels
Christmas,
authentic.
The original Christmas it didn't have electric bulbs hanging everywhere, and it didn't have little gift boxes. But it's like this sentiment of, this is the time of year where this is a tradition from somewhere that has been passed down organically or inorganically.
Yeah.
It's been passed down of, you know what, this is a good time, this is a good season, this is a good day out of 1 year where, no, I'm not even talking about, maybe not even Christmas, New Year's Day. It's a new year. The calendar resets. Everybody has to reset their frame of reference.
No, they don't have to.
What? They don't have to.
But and recognize that people that follow a lunar calendar may not even participate.
Okay, but
right, and that's kind of what I'm saying is you're coming from your, like, these are your traditions, these are the ways that this is your scaffolding, and I think part of the theme for us today is that scaffolding is not the only scaffolding.
Well, what should the scaffolding be?
I don't think there's an answer to that.
I mean, what
I want you to recognize is that, yeah. Do you have a scaffolding, and there's somebody in the Philippines that has a somewhat different scaffolding, mm-hmm. and no one's more real or right than the other.
No, I'm not saying that.
And then recognize this: 300 years ago, I don't think people were bombasted with commercials about what toys kids want, and I don't think that the tradition was, how much can I put under the tree for my kids so that I can feel good about me, right? Mm. That tradition has changed dramatically in the United States, right? Because I would hope that at some point the tradition was, let us think about Christ. Let us think about the gift that Christ is, yeah? Mm. Like, that's where the tradition might have started, before Mr. Nicholas, before commercialization, before industrial. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. My point is that it's still a part of the screen, bro. It's just somebody saying this is the right part of the screen, and we all protect our part of the screen, because if we don't, then there's chaos or something, or my ego gets deflated because I'm wrong. And that's, to me, traditions are not, they're human constructs. They're a human response. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so with that means that they're not real. They're fluid as fuck. Mm-hmm. And especially in time and space. And I'm not really, I don't really, I mean...
To me, it feels like what I'm trying to say is all roads lead home. That's what I mean when I say, like, whether you're watching the ball drop in Times Square. I say this as somebody who's always felt kind of removed from holidays. Somebody who's always kind of been on the outside. Like, you don't ask for much for your birthday. Like, you don't expect anything other than everybody shows up for Christmas. Everybody gets together.
That's how you were raised?
It's just kind of, I guess, for lack of a better descriptor, like that's
That's how you
kind of
internalized it?
That's kind of that was kind of my immediate family's take on the whole thing. Was
That's what I'm saying. Is this for you? Is this something that you get from your parents?
I'm saying as somebody who's always been kind of cynical about holiday traditions.
Yeah.
I'm kind of looking at Ramadan. I'm kind of looking at New Year's, Chinese or Western New Year's.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at Christmas as these are all efforts to plug into the void with the people around you.
That's right, because you equate the void with the collective unconscious as well.
And I think of the internet as a pseudo unconscious.
Very interesting. And a topic for a discussion at another time, for sure.
Yeah, but I guess where this kind of overlaps.
Can you write that down? Internet as the collective unconscious?
I can.
Because I think that's a really good for another time. I'm
Well,
sorry
and
to cut you off.
well, and to bring it full circle, I suppose.
Yeah.
That's what frustrates me about YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Is it's YouTube playing church deacon, church leader of saying, oh, well, we just decided arbitrarily. Naughty words in the first 30 seconds of church. You don't participate in communion.
When the people who are giving you the money to operate tell you how much they're going to give you or not give you based on what is going on in your house, then you get to decide if you're going to implement those things. And most people are going to take the money. And the reason why the money's there is because that's how much influence they have. And there is a group of people, or multiple groups of people out there right now, that want to fashion this world and socially engineer it. And it's not uncommon. I mean, come on, like, you know, how long did they go on, public TV where you couldn't curse? It's no different, right? You couldn't go on to the Jimmy Carson show and start dropping F-bombs, yeah, right? Why? Because the advertisers were not going to put up with it. Why not? Well, because the advertisers don't believe the consumers are going to watch the show if you're doing that, because the consumers that they feel are they're looking at their target audience is not going to appreciate that.
And what changed for the advertisers?
Nothing much. It's just a different group of people giving them money.
That's what I'm saying. Is this whole change to YouTube's terms of service to me feels a lot like. Oh well, I guess there's no meat on Fridays. You're allowed to eat fish, but Pope says no meat.
Right.
That's what it feels like.
That's exactly what it is.
And to me, like I'm not gonna attribute. I have my own criticisms of Catholicism, but the idea that this corner of the screen, this corner of the simulacrum, that there's going to be a top-down calling of the shots of, well, we've decided what our
At no point in history has a top-down approach worked. At no point in history does the top-down approach last. You will always have the people at the bottom resisting in some way, shape, form, or fashion. And the longer it happens, the closer you get to violent revolution. Period. That's not a threat. That's historical fact. You can't do that, and you're exactly right. And there are multiple groups of very powerful people right now that are moving and shaking. And they are trying a top-down approach because they have decided what the best way to live life is. And I totally agree that what we're experiencing right now, what we thought we had, was a government that was managed by the people. What we realize that we have in the modern United States context is a people being managed by their government. The government knows best. It's not the people telling the government, hey, I want you to represent me. Now, why is that? It's a whole nother discussion for a whole nother time. The biggest reason is because we've allowed lobbyists from every place in the country to come in and get attention when they have no right to how we vote. Now, why do they want that, though? Because they recognize that the president of the United States is called the leader of the free world, and that affects the rest of the world. Yeah. And so, anyway, that's a tradition that I hope we can instill, that all men are created equal. And I want to say that even in the United States, that's an idea. It has never really been a reality. We have overall, collectively, not treated each other as the same. We did not treat the Indian man or the black man the same as the white man. When 9/11 happened, those people were paid differently depending on who they were. They were not seen as equal. When that money went out, they were like, this guy's worth that much, that guy's worth that much. That guy was a stockbroker, he died, he's worth more than that janitor who also died. So the idea that all men are created equal is a wonderful idea that we've tried to implement and fail horribly to implement. And most of us don't really care, because most of us just
don't make the mistake of thinking that you'll manifest that ideal into reality on the internet.
We have to recognize that the internet is part of our reality.
It's a tool. It's part of it's got reality. A corner on reality. But I'm saying even below that,
the internet highlights our reality. The internet is highlighting the things that people used to tell us weren't real. The highlight is showing how human we really are. The internet is showing how human we really are, because we're seeing things that have been going on all along. That's one reason why we're in so much stress, because we see it now. It used to be funneled into us, you know? How was it? Like, listen, before 60 years ago, 70, 80, 100 years ago, you didn't know what was going on in the world. There wasn't even TV. You might have had a newspaper that was locally produced, that was talking about, a lot of times, local shit. And then you get something from New York City, or, you know, wherever the large international, you know what I mean? You know, the London Times, or I don't know what they were called, yeah? The Guardian or whatever. But my point is,
when the press isn't a website you can plug into every single day for an update. When the press is the letters you get in the mail.
Right.
When the press is the newspaper that turns up twice a week, maybe.
So if you're sitting in a very self-centric situation and you have this idealized version of the world that you now think is reality because you believe it is reality, right? Well, I believe it, so it means it's real. No.
Well, and I think the internet...
Hold on real quick. Yeah, you're right. So my point is that we're in this period of evolution of thought and information, bro. We're no longer is it easy for somebody to sit in their bubble in the outback or in the wilderness, in their own little cabin, in their own little bubble, and say the world is this, the world is that, and have nothing to contradict it. And even more importantly is that the internet, because of the anonymity of that screen, means that people are much more free with their thoughts. You know, Joe Rogan talks about that someone else that mentions that Twitter is just people talking. We're not used to that. People don't normally talk that freely in public. And that's one thing that the internet has done, is it's taken that public discourse that, you know, the guys in the locker room are shooting the shit, right? And they're, you know, Andrew Tate's one of them, right? And he's in there like, yeah, I went out with this girl the other night and I told her what was what and what did. And, you know, and all the other guys are like, yeah, well, guess what? They didn't do that in public before, right? Because you were shunned. And all the women were like, oh, no, this guy, he's a man. You know what I mean? and we didn't have when I think the example Joe talks about is, like two guys drinking beer on the side of the truck, and he's like, yeah, I heard Biden, blah, 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 blah. And the guy's like, oh, fuck Biden, that piece of shit, right? This wasn't public. This wasn't, you didn't go to a public setting and talk like that, right? We got the 3 mask rule of the Japanese, right? The one in public, the one in private, and the one that's by yourself or whatever.
I feel like we all just got handed our first box of matches.
That's funny, because I think the internet is as impactful as fire was to the human race.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
I think everybody's got their hands on a box of matches right now, and everybody's all caught up in the sound and the fury of, oh look, I can just start a fire anywhere.
Yeah.
I have fire in the palm of my hand. I have total control over this.
I can see that. I can see that.
And in a weird way,
I think what it is that the reason why people wear their social masks, and there's a reason why you have less and less people being completely honest on the internet, because they realize it's not safe always to be so authentic, right? Because there's pushback. Yeah. That's the reason why people, you would never have that guy that's drinking his beer and then he go meets the president and he's like, hello, Mr. President, I think you're a piece of, right? You're rarely going to have that, right? Because social cues, you know what I mean? You're looking in the guy's eye. You've been taught to be respectful, and looking into that person's eye kind of brings more of that respect out. When I'm just a keyboard cowboy, I'm talking to words are responding to words.
Yeah.
It's a different medium.
And it's like, I don't expect anybody to act with deference or reverence for the internet, if that makes any sense. I don't expect the internet to be a forum, for lack of a better term. I don't expect it to be a forum for decorum.
A forum for decorum.
Yeah, no, I don't expect it to be anything other than what parts of the real world am I able to see because of this? What parts of the world am I able to learn of because of this resource? And then also, you can anonymously just kind of take pot shots on the internet. Don't give that any more reverence than it's due.
Yeah, I definitely think the troll aspect is part of it. That deference for decorum, that lack of decorum that comes with. I just want to piss people off because it's funny. Or I just want to piss people off because they're easier to control when they're pissed. I like to watch the dog barking at the end of their chain when I know they can't do shit about it. But and I think a lot of people say this, the internet is just letting us see the real world. It is opening our eyes to those of us that had our screen tucked away in Montana or New York City or wherever our screen was. That screen has gotten bigger. The awareness of what's really going on in the world has gotten bigger. When we think about our awareness of sexuality since the advent of the internet, dude, I didn't have that much porn.
Yeah.
As a teenager, when I first got my first hard on and needed to do something about it, I had a National Geographic and a Victoria's Secret catalog. I had a brassiere catalog from JCPenney. My stepdad had 1 or 2 locked up in his little briefcase with his one porno VHS. Yeah, and so, and I didn't have an older brother or a father around to be like, hey, here's her happy button. If you curl your fingers, here's a nice little spot that they pulled and tugged on.
Speaking of boxes of matches, yeah.
Yeah, right? So I didn't have any, but I also had never thought about shoving down a girl's throat and watching her throw up or gag, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I didn't have that.
Yeah.
I mean, I might have heard about some BDSM from some kind of little shock thing or whatever, but I mean, I had Penthouse, Playboy, and Hustler. You know, the most outrageous thing I saw was a black man with the size of my arm next to some white woman. You know what I mean? That was the most outrageous.
And you never got confronted with the reality of, dude, what is up with all these chicks? Like, just throwing themselves at dudes on camera, like, for a paycheck.
Well, let's remember, some of them are being manipulated and otherwise sexually extorted.
Like, what does this mean? Like, what does this mean that this is these girls' occupation? Does it mean they're wild, like, libertine individuals and that they all came out of the womb that way? Or does it mean that there's a market for producing girls that are willing to do this stuff?
I think, again, the internet highlights what's already there.
What worries me is...
that was already there. Prostitution is the oldest profession. Right? Mm-hmm. How many times have you heard that, right? How is this any different, bro? Mm-hmm. The fact of the matter is that men are built to be horny a lot. Mm-hmm. Right? Because what's our main purpose? What's our purpose in life?
Basically, it comes down to win the game.
No. What game? It's not a fucking game.
Sure.
No, our sole purpose is to reproduce.
Yeah, don't croak until...
The only purpose is to carry that information that has been carried by every ancestor, been added to and taken away from. Mm-hmm. That's our only real purpose. You can talk about, oh, my purpose is to be an accountant. My purpose is to save this person. My purpose is this. God put me on it. No.
Yeah.
No, we were put on this planet to make the world better by teaching this generation how to help the next generation be better.
Yeah.
Our purpose is to reproduce.
Yeah.
Literally, like, it boils down to that. You can have all these highfalutin, oh, my purpose is to create a new fashion line.
To rephrase that is the game.
What is
it? Being a biological human male.
I definitely can see that. I mean, I'm not going to disagree that there are gaming aspects to life, but the one of, you know, I have to amass material. That's a false game.
That's a pseudo.
That's
a pseudo simulacrum.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but the real purpose is to reproduce. Or, like, I had to reconcile this because I don't have kids, right? So if I'm not reproducing, then what am I doing with my energy? I'm still trying to help the next generation, right? I still, like, my nephews, and I have nephews that aren't even real blood nephews, but they're nephews, right? I'm unc, right? Because that's how my energy goes out. And what I see is that I want to create less suffering in the world. Not just for myself, I've already suffered it. I recognize that it sucks. I don't want to bring a child into this world. That's why I don't have kids, because I don't want to bring somebody into this suffering. Yeah? But I recognize that I can help the next generation, because there's going to be millions of people that come after me. And they shouldn't have to suffer the same way I did. Because I'm smarter than my parents were and my grandparents were. I have more power than they did. And I have a perception that says I can actually affect it by teaching other people that if you live in a life that doesn't create suffering, ultimately the karmic effect is there is less fucking suffering. But the basic point of it all is to carry that DNA, the life that we're a part of, that is not just localized to me and you. This life that's in me is not just me. This life is a whole big part of a much larger community that I'm part of, a much larger organism I'm just a cell of, right? Now, the truth is that I'm a cell, and I'm going to have a cycle, and I'm going to live, and I'm going to die, and there's nothing I can do about certain parts of the suffering, right? I'm going to get sick. I'm going to have joints and aches. I'm probably going to have some hunger pains at times. You know, I'm going to have high days and low days. You know?
Yeah, and a lot of
I don't have to create suffering by being selfish and raping somebody. I don't have to be selfish by selling my soul so that I can amass riches by stepping on you, by enslaving you, by oppressing you, right? I don't have to, what good is my riches if I get it off 1,000 African kids digging in a mine with their bare hands so that I can have this phone?
Or stealing their water.
Or stealing their water. Or stealing the resources that are theirs and giving them to some king in Europe, yeah? To me, that's the point, though, is that, like, to create less suffering. Because life is hard. And it doesn't matter if you're shitting in toilet made of gold or not, you're still going to suffer, you know, in different ways, in different times. But we're all going to have loss. We're all going to deal with death.
That's kind of what I see as, like, being the horror of a parent, is that moment where you realize lessening the suffering of the future, it doesn't just so much involve cutting all the suffering out. What it means is teaching other people how to handle the suffering that's inevitable.
Yeah, but it's also like, let's not ignore, you know, like in the past before the internet, we may not have thought about how much sexploitation was happening because we didn't see it. We may not have thought about the sexual trafficking that happens to some of these cam girls or blah, 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 right? We may not thought about that. We may not have realized it. We may have lived in a world where we pretended that it didn't happen until it happened to us, right? Until it happened to my daughter or my sister, right? Like, then all of a sudden it becomes very fucking real and it's right on my screen. And this is not an illusion. This is a real experience that my sister, my daughter has had, right? And I'm a man, and I take in this content, and how am I affecting the cycle of it just by being a man? Because I got a wee-wee and this drive, right? I got this sexual drive, right? Like think about, like, I heard a stat the other day, like 70% of women by the time they turn 18 have already been harassed and or molested by an older man. And oftentimes that older man is a family member. Like, just take away the numbers and realize the reality of that statement. I don't care if it's 20%. It's a lot, you know? So what does that tell me? Well, it tells me that we're on this part of the screen and we're just ignoring this part of the screen. We're ignoring our sexuality. And that's one thing that the internet has done, is it's opened up our sexuality. Now, some people may disagree with the results of opening that up, and I may have some questions for transsexual people. But nonetheless, I think it's a great benefit that we are experiencing our true selves, and I think our sexual nature is a very important part of learning who your authentic self is, and therefore to repress that, ignore that, deny that, manifests in a lot of other. You put it in. If you put your sexuality in the shadows, then it's part of the shit that happens in the shadows.
Yeah. See, and that's what worries me about the internet. It's not what it's going to reflect back to me about the real world. It's not what it has to tell me about the real world. And there's some scary shit to find out about. What worries me almost more than that is the internet kind of taking on a life of its own. So what worries me is where the internet is now there's so much attention, there's so much focus, there's so much energy being put into the internet.
Yeah.
What worries me is how the internet's going to change that reality.
Yeah, well, you could be like the Amish and decide that you don't want to participate. In 100 years, you'll just be finding yourself left behind.
I don't think that's an answer.
But I think part of the real is it's here, it's there, it's happening. Like there's no separating it. There's not, and in a couple years, there's not going to be any separating AI from how we interact with the universe either. Yeah. And one of the things that I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but let me use this example to exemplify one of your concerns. When hip hop music first comes out, and these young men in the urban streets or wherever they were have this voice and this outlet, this platform, right? And they're speaking about their experiences. At one point, it's a pure art. And it's just an artist expressing, this is my perspective, this is what's happening. But then it turns into it's a promotion. As time goes on, it becomes a promotion for a certain lifestyle and for a certain culture.
And then it becomes just another screen.
And then it becomes just another screen. But at first, it's like this outlet, right? Hey, y'all, look at what y'all have done to us. This is what we're experiencing. You know, this shit ain't right, right? This is our culture. This is our feedback. This is us feeding back through artistic expression, right? What our experience is like. Fuck your part of the screen. This is my experience. This is real to me because I'm experiencing. This is my experience. That part is real. And so, but it turns into now we get other people involved maybe who want to put some money in, want to promote certain things. You know, maybe like the people who make a lot of money off of for-profit prisons. You know what? Not a bad idea to have a whole culture of people talking about killing and doing drugs.
Or people who make money off other people's videos.
Yeah. Sorry, what?
You could call it hip-hop music. You could call it YouTube.
Yeah.
Point is, there's this time-old tradition, for lack of a better word, of cathedrals popping up onto all of these forums, formats, structures, arts. There's these cathedrals that seem like they pop up, and then suddenly there's no void there anymore.
Check this out though. Those cathedrals are called traditions. You see what I did there? Here's this thing that now becomes a church. It becomes its own institution. I'm using hip hop right now, right? It becomes an institution. All of a sudden now it's no longer a free expression. Yeah, it's got rules. These are the parameters. Now we've got saints and we've got sinners and we've got leaders, and you understand what I'm saying? And it becomes a church. That's why when you said cathedral, I'm like, yeah, the cathedral pops up out of what? It comes out of the common man, and then you have a group of people, and all of a sudden they create an institution. Cathedral.
See, I see what you're saying now.
You see what I did there?
Yeah, but I think the institutions co-opt the traditions.
I think it's kind of like a catch-22, a feeding of one to the other.
Yeah. But I think if you were theoretically able to follow the chain of dominoes all the way back to the beginning of time, I think you'll find a group of hunter-gatherer type people who sort of collectively they sort of collectively recognize, hey, there's seasons to life. There's a time to reap, there's a time to sow. They
didn't build cathedrals at the time, but we call them religions, we call them traditions.
Yeah. But as time goes on, it's like shallower, intelligent, but shallower minded people have this way of co-opting the pure expression, the real sentiment, the value of, you know what, Chet and I have known each other for a long time, and you know what, it's a new year. We kind of have this routine, we kind of have this way that we interact with each other, and it's a new year, so it's like we'll get together, we'll recognize the new year, and we'll reflect on the previous one. It's like the pure sentiment of that. That's still a pure enough expression that it's difficult for an institution to pop up and co-opt that. You know, but if we had any more sway than we do over the internet, it's not hard to imagine. It's not hard to imagine a scenario where somebody steps in and is like, hey, the Cousin Chet podcast,
You should watch it. Click like and
Yeah.
subscribe.
But-
Comments. Algorithm love.
Like there's this gatekeeping, and I feel like what the gatekeeping is it's constantly co-opting traditions and commercializing it. It's co-opting it.
I
but
think
it's-
that is a function of our modern capitalist society. But yeah.
But rolling into the new year, that's kind of what's on my mind.
But
is it's
let me kind of go back to the traditions and the things there, right? Because you're like, well, if it's YouTube, so you and I are brothers, right? Cavemen, right? Got the same mom.
Ugin Lug.
Who fucking knows if we got the same dad or not? Because they're all dead. Fucking woolly mammoths, tough. Anyway, and so we're brothers, and we come up, and we find this other kid, this other group, this guy over here. We decide, you know what? We're stronger than they are, so we're gonna kick their ass. We're gonna kill their men. We're gonna steal their women. Right now, we create our own tribe, and you and I have decided that we're gonna co-rule this tribe just for the shits and giggles of this example, right? And we build our tribe, right? And let's say you got 2 wives and I got 2 wives, or you got 3, I got 3, and we have 3 kids with each. Let's call it 3 and 3. Now we'll call it 9. Got 18 kids, right? We've got a tribe, man. And guess what? In this tribe, we have traditions. You and I decide what the traditions are. We create them, right? At this point in time, this is what the tribe's going to do. We're going to have a big bonfire. Everybody's going to pass around a peace pipe, and we're going to say what we're thankful for, right? Now, 100 miles away in another cave, there's another 2 brothers. Call them Romulus, and what was the other one's name?
Remus.
Was it Romulus and Remus? You know, I'm speaking
The
about
Roman
the Roman myth, right? Right. You got these 2 brothers. They're raised by a wolf, whatever. They're raised in the wild, and they come up with their own traditions. They're not the same. Maybe they're not the same. Maybe they are. Maybe collective consciousness has said, you know what? We're going to build a bonfire. We're going to pass around a peace pipe because that's what we got. You know, because we got peace pipes. You know, so of course they're going to be included in our celebrations because we really like the peace pipe. Yeah. You know, but guess what? There's a guy over there that's got some fermented fucking grapes, and he doesn't like the peace pipe. And his traditions are different. For one, the peace pipe affects him differently than the grapes. Yeah. Anyway, that's a whole tangent. My point is that these traditions are created, and the ones that come through are simply the ones that have lasting power, right? Because guess what? Mine and yours died off. Romulus and Remus kept going, right? It became the Roman Empire. And it affected the culture for hundreds of years, including today, as everyone wants to replicate the Roman Empire. And through the traditions and the ethos that made it as strong as it was. Now, are those traditions the same? No, they can't be, because there was no Jesus when Romulus and Remus were doing their thing. Yeah, that became part of it in the Roman Empire. But even that changed through time, the traditions of how that's practiced and how it's manifest.
I have a counterpoint to what you're saying.
Counter me.
So the ancient Greeks really dug the ancient Egyptians. And the reason being is because once upon a time, some Greeks hopped on a boat, sailed all the way down through the Nile to meet the Egyptians. And one of the first things that they recognized was, hey, you got this god Thoth. He's the scribe of the gods. He's the messenger of the gods. He's the god that Egyptian people interface with. He's the medium. We have that same god. We just call him Hermes. Hermes, messenger of the gods, he transits information between the gods and the human domain. And so when people trip balls on the winter solstice, it's like, if you're going to see anybody, odds are you're going to trip balls and meet Hermes. As you like. But not only that, there is a single myth about a dude who gets a divine revelation. He gets a stroke of divine providence that informs him the world's gonna get smashed. The entire world is gonna be flooded. You need to build a boat. That idea, that meme, persists on opposite sides of every ocean, every major ocean, anywhere that there's been people. This is a tradition, this is a meme that persists. And when I say if you follow the chain of dominoes and all these traditions back all the way to their roots, I think you come to a conclusion like Carl Jung came to, which is all of these traditions are shallow iterations of they're all different roots they're all different branches, surface level branches that run down the same tree trunk, and they intersperse into the same roots.
Yeah, they're just humans
Yeah.
that are trying to describe it using the abilities that they have to describe it.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way, the two tribe thing that I was doing is to like consider, you know, these groups that we call pagans, right?
Mm-hmm.
In say 1200 AD even, right? You had Norse, you had Remova, you had the Slavic, right? This is in the western, northern, not the in the eastern and northern parts of Europe, not the western parts of Europe that were controlled by the Roman Empire and the church. But remember that before the church was there, you had these very similar groups of people, and like there's a collective consciousness. But you know, we call he's Jupiter over here, he's Zeus over there, and I just use Greek and Roman when I wanted to say we call it Thor over here and something else for the thunder god over here in the Remuva or the Slavic traditions, right? And maybe they have different characteristics because the stories that are told around campfires are different, right? But they still come from the same ideas, right? You have this god of thunder, you have a sun god, you have this god, you like these archetypes, right? That Jung and Freud would talk about. They're not archetypes because it's from nature, right? I have this god, the sun, that comes up and goes down, and there's the moon, and you know, and I'm using my understanding of binary sexuality and a binary of male and female. So the sun's masculine, the moon is feminine, right? As we start to classify these things, and what we find out is that humans oftentimes have come up with some similar things that, you know, Jung would call collective unconscious, or maybe it's just, you know, at a time and space in human history, we all have just about the same amount of information available to us and the same level of consciousness and intellect. Yeah. And so I want to basically kind of like put those two together, right? That I'm talking about traditions can be made over there and over here, but which one lasts, right? Mm-hmm. So for instance,
you go.
And in the Norse, Romanov, and Slavic, the three Eastern European pagan, which one lasted the longest? Well, it's the Norse. Our weeks are named after their gods. Thor's Day, Freda Day, right? Even in our Marvel comics, we still know who Thor and Loki are. Even in our modern, right? We're not using the names of the Remuva tribes or the Slavic tribes, right? Because they just didn't last in the train of traditions that came to us. Yeah, I mean, part of that's because we're from Europe, and the Vikings went to Europe, and then the Vikings went to England, and then the England came here, right? So that's our train.
I think when you throw the Scythian clans into that mix,
The Scythian clans.
They were these central European.
The steppes.
Yeah, sort of like the Central European steppe peoples.
Yeah.
I think the Scythians in particular tie all those together
They were
in a
Tengri.
profound way. They were what?
Tengri.
Tengri.
It's the same religion as Genghis Khan. Tengri was a pagan, for lack of a better term, religion, but it oftentimes synthesized with the other religions around it.
With
But
the sky god?
yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, Tengri. It's the religion of Genghis Khan. It's the religion of a lot of. But it's again.
Yeah.
If you look at it, it's not that far removed
Yeah.
from this idea of I have multiple gods for the functions of what's happening around me.
It's strange and scary until you can find some familiarity with it.
Yeah. Say that again.
It's strange and scary and Mongolian.
What is it?
Like the
idea of it?
Tengri, the Norse myths.
Yeah,
versus
well,
the
that's just because,
Slavs.
well, we have this thing where, it's antiquated and stupid and tribal and it's for lesser people because Christians are better. But really, is it? It's
That's one
sorry.
way to look at it, but I don't think that's what it is.
no, I mean, but that's how we've been taught. I mean, that's part of the Christian. Go back to that part of the conversation. That's part of the Christian way. Is just like we're going to kind of clear these people out, right? What did they? I mean, seriously,
Yeah.
like what did the Christian church do with the Norse Vikings that were coming into Europe and northern Europe and England?
I mean, they conquered them or absorbed them.
What they did was the church said, "Hey, we recognize that you're going to continue plundering and killing. So what we're going to do is you become Christian, and we're going to give you the land.
Yeah.
So you'll stop killing people." And those people became the leaders of the church. They didn't care. They still maintained many of their other traditions, right? Again, that's where we get the overlap, right? Because there's never like this clear. But so what? I forget what my point was now, which is fine, because we're working on time, and this has been our longest episode, and I think we've.
Well, you mentioned Andrew Tate earlier, and one of
I
Andrew.
did
One
the
of,
taint.
Yeah.
I'm just calling him the taint.
Yeah. One of his favorite words is the Matrix.
He loves it, yeah, and he's not wrong. I give him much kudos for that.
That's the thing. He's right,
Yeah,
but kind of in a very shallow sense.
yeah,
But I think when Musashi's writing, when he's meditating on a life of hardship and self-improvement and learning to live with oneself, when he's reflecting on what it means to be human, he comes up with this idea of the void. And if you ask me, that's, if you remove all the scary, unfamiliar, like kind of authoritarian implications of the word matrix, that's the real matrix. It's like this void. It's this collective unconscious. It's this seed. It's this empty seed of potential. I think that's the nature of the Matrix. As human beings, we're always projecting ourselves onto something. The YouTube is one screen. The internet is a bigger screen still. Every religion and every culture is its own screen.
yeah.
But I think, at the end of the day, there's something human that I think transcends those individual traditions, those individual cultures. I think it's all a reach towards something. It's all a reach towards that void, that something at the beginning.
I'm struggling with something, but so I'm not going to mess with that too much, because I am going to just kind of highlight that, like traditions, and if we want to use the Matrix, because the Matrix is just like in a way, it's this illusion of a traditional life, right? We think about the movie, everybody thinks in their brains they're walking around in this world. They're not really, they're just battery packs. And so, and so
I'm living authentically because I have the right garb on. I have the right shoes. I drive the right car. I have the right house.
but the traditions in the matrix are created by us, and then it becomes an institution. It becomes that cathedral that now the cathedral is telling the people how to, see what I'm saying? At some point, the people are creating it. The people are putting the input, kind of like we the people, right? We put
hip-hop.
but let me use the United States in this example. We the people have created this. We are the ones that are providing the information to create the structure, to create the scaffolding. But then at some point, somebody says that's enough. We got enough framing. We got enough scaffolding. No more. This is it. This is how it's defined. Boom. It's a cathedral. And now the cathedral looks to the people and it says, we're going to tell you how it is. Yeah? So in a way, traditions are just our forefathers controlling us, right? But there's this the thin line, right? It's kind of like prostitution, right? There's some women that are doing it willingly, and there's some women that are doing it completely unwillingly, right? And so, so there's this willing approach to the matrix, right? Some people really enjoy the matrix. It's safe for them. They don't want to be tested. They don't want somebody to come in and shake up their dopamine. I'm happy. I chose happiness. Leave me alone. Right? They don't want anything. Oh, I don't want to hear about the little girl getting raped because it doesn't make me happy. Right? I don't want to hear about the troubles in the world because I'm in my own little happy bubble. Right? And I just want to be in echo happy. Okay? Sorry, I feel like I'm super hyper active right now. What was I trying to say there? That we create the tradition. The tradition creates the structure that becomes our community, our society. And over time, it becomes a machine in and of itself. It becomes a matrix in and of itself. And one of the things that I think we're really experiencing right now is that we are tearing down those old traditions. We are questioning those traditions, and we are saying, dear Mr. and Mrs. Forefather, foreparent, it doesn't work anymore. It doesn't apply. We're not living in a localized thing where everybody has reindeer and carnivorous trees. Yeah, we live in a world, one of the beautiful things about America, the United States specifically, is that it's probably one of the few places other than the Mediterranean Sea of the Roman Empire where you had a mixture of all this input, where you had a mixture of all these different traditions, right, that are coming together in all these traditions. And so what we're having now is the European-centric tradition that has overlaid us for so long. We now have a population that says, that's not my tradition. Diversity is not a simulation. Diversity is, I come in with my culture and my culture is just as valid as yours. Diversity is not, you come here and you speak my language and you do my holidays. As much as some people would like that to be how we are diverse, right? Diversity is much more than just pigment of skin. It's cultural diversity, it's sexual diversity, it's perspective diversity. And that's one of the things that, like, earlier on when I heard, and you're like, well, you're speaking from a very Eurocentric, and a very Eurocentric is I am the center, and I'm not saying you, but Eurocentric is very much I am the center of the universe. I am special. I am God's special child. Right? And my purpose as God's special child is to go teach the heathens my way. Because if I'm God's special child, then my way must be the right way. Yeah? And now where does the Christian get that tradition? Because that's not just born of Christianity and this idea that I need to civilize the world. No. That was long before with the Romans, way before Christianity. And it's honestly not even part of what Jesus was really teaching. take over the world. He said, I don't need to take over the world. God's already the leader of my world, right? But we have these groups, right? These traditions, the offspring of Romulus and Remus, right? Who created this Roman Empire, and they were like, we are going to conquer the world, bring it under one umbrella, one civilization, right? And that's not new with the Romans either, because Alexander had done it already. And Alexander's not alone. You know, there was Darius or whomever, yeah? And so my part of the thing is that they also got it from this specialness come from the Old Testament and the Jewish Torah, right? Because who are the Jews? The chosen people. And if you're going to compete with the chosen people, then you obviously have to be better than the chosen people. So you are special people, right? Yeah. And to bring that around full circle is to show how those ethos of traditions continue on regardless of culture, religion, philosophy, right? They're permeating through.
You mentioned Jesus.
Yeshua, sorry, I misnamed him.
Okay.
Sorry,
Jesus, Yeshua,
sorry, Yeshua.
Isa, Isis. Either way, like
whatever his
name is. The dude from the Gospels. The dude from the Gospels.
I love it. The Lebowski. Let's go. Yeah. The dude.
So, the great Lebowski who died on the cross for our sins. Peace be upon him.
Peace be upon the dude.
Hey, this guy Jesus. There's one. I remember reading this. I don't remember how old I was, but I remember reading this passage from one of the Gospels, and unless I'm misremembering, I believe it's one of the iterations where the Pharisees bring the adulteress, and they're like, "So what do you say now? Like, she broke the rules. She broke the tradition.
She broke the rules.
She broke the rules. She's got to get stoned.
Yep.
She's got to be stoned. What do you think about that, Jesus? What's your sagely wisdom have to say about this?" Yeah. And it's not what he says. Everybody wants to point to the red letters and be like, well, look, this is what he said. This is what it meant. This is what it is. But I don't remember when it was. I was reading that story once, and I for the first time, I noticed not what he says, but what it says he does. Mm-hmm. And in response to this, again, I might be mixing up the anecdotes, but
go ahead.
They bring this lady to him, and they're like, she cheated. We have a rule for cheaters. This is as Jewish a rule as it gets. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What do you have to say, Jesus? And Jesus kind of stops, and it says he starts drawing on the ground. Mm-hmm. Like he just kind of pauses, mm-hmm. and he just doodles. Mm-hmm. He just draws a little something in the dirt. Mm-hmm. And then he gets up and he says, "Any of you who is without sin, cast the first stone." And the reason why that struck me is it was like, that seems like something, that's something I've seen people do. Mm-hmm. I've seen somebody in a gotcha moment where somebody drops a big heavy hammer on them, and it's like there's this very human response of like, Christ, no pun intended, but Christ, like, how do I even broach this? How do I even approach this? And you just start fiddling. Mm-hmm. You just start drawing. You know, how am I even gonna explain this to these people? But it's like he just kind of unplugs from the simulacrum. He just unplugs from the matrix for a minute, and he just kind of free forms for a second. And then he comes up, he stands up out of the void, and he says, all right, which one of you is going to do it first? Which one of you is so pure? Which one of you is so authentically correct?
That you're willing to publicly say you are too.
Yeah. Which one of you is the man? Which one of you is going to be the guy who brutally eviscerates this lady because she broke the rules? And it's like, to me, it's like, yeah, there's all this Christmas, and there's Christmas, there's morning, there's midnight mass, there's Sunday church.
Yeah.
There's the tradition.
Yeah.
But the tradition is something that's been, it's a simulacrum over top of something.
It's become the new, it at one time was the Matrix for a large group of people.
And I guess going into the new year, that's on my mind, is like, I'm not gonna be so naive as to say, hey, New Year's resolution, guys, unplug, #unplug. Like,
Unplug.
I'm not saying we all need to be Ted Kaczynski and go move in the woods. I'm not saying we all need to go back to living in log huts. But I'm saying going into the new year, I guess that's my resolution, is I'm not going to check my brain at the door and let other people rule my projections. I'm not going to let somebody else project me onto some screen so that I forget why it was that Christmas even meant anything to me ever once in my life. I'm not going to buy into the consumerism and forget that, okay, as shallow and as superfluous as all these traditions are, they're all rooted in something human. They are rooted in something global and universal. But I'm not going to let YouTube, I'm not going to let Twitter, I'm not going to let the internet, I'm not going to let the cathedral tell me what that human condition is. I'm not going to let them tell me what's in the void.
Because they're not American of you.
Is it?
Yeah. I think that's part of what the American spirit is the American spirit says, no, you don't get to tell me who I am. You don't get to tell me what I am. You don't get to tell me what to think or how to think. Remember, we're founded by a bunch of people that were leaving a church that was created arbitrarily because the Pope wouldn't let the guy get a divorce. So he said, I'm the new Pope. And how much credibility can you give a religion that is formed like that? The Anglican Church is a lie. I'm sorry to all the Anglicans and everybody that is ego attached to that as your source, but it's a lie.
It's as much of a lie.
It's as much as an illusion as anything you want to talk about.
Only fish on Fridays.
That's to say that looking at the Pope as the vicar and that he belongs in Rome for some reason other than Constantinople or Damascus or Jerusalem. I mean, we can go into that too, because there's a lot about the Catholic Church that's a lie.
But that's your point. It's all a bunch of illusions. It's all a bunch of samsara.
It's all a bunch of samsara that is because at some point the earnest and honest people that were creating this because it was actually beneficial at some point were usurped by the institution that then was usurped by people that saw the institution as a way to move in society. How many years is a mafia family member putting their second son in to hope that they get some kind of recognition as a cardinal or another person of power, so they therefore have church political power? There's nothing, looking at the church, the history of the Catholic Church, I'm, sorry that this hurts so many people's feelings to hear the truth, but the truth is that church is ugly. Like, historically. The way that it was created, the way that it was formed, the way that they decided who was right and who was wrong, and what doctrine you're going to believe. And then it comes down to the Apostles' Creed. And if you don't believe it, you're going to hell, because the majority of people at a certain place in time got together and voted, and the majority ruled. And so now you have to make these confessions of faith. And the sad thing is, it's like, you know how many people died because they wouldn't submit to the matrix and confess to something that wasn't true for them? Like, the Catholic Church got a lot of dirt under their fingernails, bro. And I mean, so much so that how can you claim to be a vicar of Christ as the head of that organization, as the head of that institution?
The guy who wouldn't capitulate. You're the vicar of the guy who wouldn't be forced to say.
Exactly.
He wouldn't say anything he didn't believe.
Do you see the oxymoronic paradox of that? Mm-hmm. Like, no. Because the truth is the Catholic Church be the first in line to put him on the cross again if he come back today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Dostoevsky wrote a short story about that.
There's no doubt in my mind that they would be the first in line.
Yep.
The first in line will be the churches. The Sadducees and the Pharisees of today are the modern day Christian church. Period. Point blank. No question about it. In my mind, if Jesus walked in to most of y'all's churches, you would fucking kick him out. And with that, I'm going to say thanks for watching. This has been a 2-hour New Year's Eve special just for you, and that guy over there too, and that girl, and the non-binary. What's up, everybody? Thanks for watching. Thanks for liking. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for commenting. Thanks for all the algorithm love. I appreciate you 1,000%. Since you spent 2 hours with me, I suggest you unplug, get off the internet, take your shoes off, go stand on some bare grass.
Go touch grass.
See you next time. Peace.